What's up guys, hope you're all doing well. As always, I would really appreciate if you can take a second to like this video and show your support by subscribing. It really helps the channel out, so thank you for your support. But folks, one of the biggest heels in MMA is back. Colby Covington will be taking on Tyron Woodley in one of the most anticipated fights which has been in the making for a very long time. Back when Tyron was still the champion, this was the fight everybody wanted to see, given the build-up, the hype, the rivalry and the bad blood that Colby Covington brought to the mix, and the compelling storyline of two fighters fighting out of the same gym, having trained with each other in the past, and clearly they did not like each other. It was a shame this fight never materialized back when Tyron was the champ. However, the UFC has now delivered and has given the fans this fight, which personally I'm really looking forward to. Again, love him or hate him, Colby talks the talk and walks the walk, as he's demonstrated some amazing performances in the octagon, especially in the fight with Usman, which I believe was one of the greatest fights of all time. And on the other hand, you've got Tyron, who's one of the most intimidating fighters in the UFC, just a beast when it comes to sheer explosiveness and knockout power. The fight will be a showdown of the strike volume and wrestling pressure of Colby versus the sheer power and explosiveness and experience of Tyron Woodley. And I'll be breaking down this fight from the perspective of either fighters to understand who might win this bout and how they get it done. So I'll start with Colby's path to victory, covering his wrestling credentials, the pressure he puts on his opponents, and his high volume of strikes that he throws in every fight. And then I'll go into Tyron's explosiveness to cover distance in a very short time, striking, and the power that he possesses. So starting off with Colby Covington, who might be the most hated fighter in the UFC, but you cannot deny that the man makes his fights entertaining, whether it be the build-up to the fights or these exceptional dominant performances he puts on in the octagon. And what supports these great performances is that high-level wrestling credential. As the All-American and two-time Pac-10 champion, Colby brings high-level wrestling ability which allows him to dictate the pace and place of the fight. And this allows him to push the pace and overwhelm his opponents with that superior grappling ability. This is Colby's biggest weapon, as he demonstrated this in the fight with Robbie Lawler, RDA and Damian Maia. His ability to wear you down by constantly mixing things up in the clinch, distracting you with elbows to then quickly go to a takedown attempt, and this never allows his opponents to catch a break and just get the opportunity to go on the offense, which allows Colby to secure such dominant wins. And his high level wrestling ability is also supported by Colby's crazy pressure and gas tank, which he uses to tire out his opponents. I mean, the pace Colby puts on his fights is ridiculous. He's constantly pushing you back and attempting single legs or takedowns at the fence. It's just draining to defend all those takedowns, and unlike Khabib and Usman, who tend to hold their opponents down when they get them down, Colby is actually quite open to the idea of letting the opponents get back up, as that opens up opportunities to land some shots as they're trying to get back up, and also drains them further because getting back up takes a lot more energy than defending those takedowns. And Colby is so confident in his wrestling and stamina that he knows he can take down his opponent again. The formula of rinse and repeat really allows Colby to dominate his opponents. The final attribute of Colby's game, which has seen a massive improvement, is his striking. In the earlier fights, you could argue that Colby's striking was quite basic and that it was probably one of the areas that his opponents could try to beat him in. However, Colby has done a great job in diversifying his skills and has added a lot more techniques here, and one of them is the high volume of low power strike that he throws. These aren't thrown with a lot of power, but just enough to sting the opponent and get their attention. All these strikes have a single purpose, which is to open up takedown opportunities. But Colby also mixes in some looping overhand rights, which are his power shots, to really stun his opponents, which we saw against Usman, where Colby was able to land some really powerful shots to stun Usman and really hurt him. He also uses his kicks to keep his opponents guessing, especially because he's not worried about getting taken down. Again, technique wise, there are some holes here. His looping overhands aren't exactly well telegraphed, which makes him prone to counters, and he keeps his chin low without guarding it when he throws these shots, which puts him at risk of getting caught, and Usman was able to capitalize on this in the final round. However, everyone has their own technique and style, and Colby's style has a single purpose of allowing him to overwhelm his opponents and then suffocate them with his wrestling. Now, moving on to the former champion Tyron Woodley, who, let's be honest, has not been having a great time coming into this fight with back-to-back dominant losses to Usman and Gilbert Burns. This fight really is a must-win for Woodley, and I'm sure he's feeling the pressure here. 3 big losses in a row, and especially losing to a guy who has been talking so much shit about you in the past few years, may end up being Tyron's last performance in the octagon. And so I'm sure he's aware of this and wants to put on a solid performance, which he definitely has the skill set for. The very first thing to talk about is that explosiveness that Tyron possesses. The ability to close the distance between him and his opponent in a flash is really useful in MMA, because that's the safest way to win, to put your opponents to sleep. And Woodley's explosiveness is something to admire. I mean, it's crazy to see how much speed in the octagon he possesses, and this was what helped Woodley to secure that championship belt against Lawler. But as amazing as this ability to close the distance quickly is, it's also a double-edged sword, as the more you delay, the more you lose that explosiveness as you go later into the fight. And this is what cost Woodley the title against Usman. Now, Woodley's ideal scenario is when he's backed up against the cage, but his opponent isn't really pushing him back. Rather, his opponent is getting led into a trap set by Woodley. But of course, that's not what happened against Usman and Burns, who were just going after Woodley and not letting him set up his combination, which really utilizes that explosiveness to land the finishing blow. And Woodley's combinations are perfectly matched for that explosiveness, because he's able to trick his opponents into lowering their guard by using that initial feint and then completing the combination with the overhand bomb, which puts his opponents away. That explosiveness is key here, because that combination cannot work without a rapid, chaotic entrance, which almost panics Tyron's opponents, who instinctually pull their head back or lower their guard, misreading the entrance and then getting caught with a punch, as we saw in the Lawler fight and the fight with Darren Till. And if you add on this to Tyron's immense power, you're in for a bad night, because that punch will put you in a different dimension. Everything Woodley throws is with so much power, whether it's his leg kicks, punches or elbows. They're just thrown with bad intentions and full force, and that's something his opponents are so wary of, that when Woodley launches an attack, they instinctually fall back and, in a sense, fall into Woodley's trap, because he wants you to step back so that he can extend his power shot on you and direct his whole body weight into his punch for that vicious KO. However, as powerful and dangerous as Woodley is, it's all going to be a case of which fighter manages to stay composed in there. The minute Colby sways from his game plan, which is to put constant pressure on Woodley and keep him guessing with all different kinds of strikes, will be the moment Tyron can get in the game and execute his game plan, which is to stun Colby. And the problem for Colby is that he needs to be switched on for 25 minutes here of the fight, because Tyron only needs a few seconds to set up that launch into his overhand right, and that'll be it for Colby. Not only does Colby need to keep the pressure and constantly try to take Woodley down and tire him, he needs to be careful of his overhand looping strikes, because Tyron can counter with a right of his own to finish Colby. Woodley, on the other hand, needs to be wary of being too complacent and not showing enough urgency, and end up being gun shy to the point he lets the fight slip past him, like what happened in the Usman fight. This is a really hard fight to predict, but I feel that wrestling pressure of Colby and his stamina will eventually wear Woodley down and help Colby get a decision win. If Woodley wants to win, he needs to switch on early and go after Colby and not second guess himself, because Colby is tough and it's not going to be easy to put him away. So Woodley really needs to be all in when he attacks and not be gun shy in this fight if he wants to win. But I do feel Woodley's habit of backing himself up against the cage plays really well into Colby's game plan, which is to really suffocate you at the cage. And we're likely to see Woodley stuff a few takedowns and be forced to defend yet another takedown on the other side of the octagon until Colby finally secures it and drains Woodley's stamina to get a decision win. But those are my thoughts on the fight, and I'm really interested to see what you guys think of this fight. So please feel free to comment down below whether you agree or disagree with me. And if you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing. And with that out of the way, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.